Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and as decided by you guys, today I'm going to be talking about the newest remix album from deadmau5, Here's the Drop. deadmau5 is an artist who should really need no introduction. The man, the myth, the legend, Joel Zimmerman, one of the most iconic and influential producers in all of electronic music, and one of the first artists to really get me hooked on dance music with such infectious electro house songs as Channel 42, Some Chords, Ghosts and Stuff. Needless to say, I'm a massive fan of his music, have greatly enjoyed following him throughout the years and watching him do his own thing, not really caving into trends all that much, crafting complex and intricate electronic music backed up by quite a bit of songwriting skill. Zimmerman's use of chord structure and progression to convey emotion surpasses pretty much everyone else that I've ever listened to in electronic music. He's very talented in what he does. For me, this talent reached its peak in 2013 with the release of Zimmerman's mini album 7, which was, I'd say, his most simplistic project at the time, being largely comprised of just short piano pieces. However, in this particular context, I wouldn't say simplicity was a bad thing. In fact, far from it. On 7, Zimmerman proved that less can in fact be more by using these piano pieces to create this dark atmosphere, this hellish, nightmarish wasteland. Even some of the happier songs on that project were pretty sinister. Overall, one of the darkest collections of music I've ever listened to, and one of my personal favorites, and clearly one of Zimmerman's favorites as well, as we've seen the ideas presented on 7 resurfacing over and over again. Firstly, on the massive double album While One Is Less Than Two, which saw a few of the songs from 7 being reworked into a more, I guess, clubby context, with these minimalistic, gut-punching EDM drops that for me were just unbelievable at the time. In 2018, we saw these ideas reworked yet again alongside some of Zimmerman's other hits for the album Where's the Drop, which I'd say kind of took Zimmerman's songwriting back to its roots with largely orchestral arrangements, a bit of piano in there as well, and of course some synthesizers sprinkled in. All in all, I think Where's the Drop is a decent project, though I didn't really feel the urge to come back to it all that much after listening to it once. For me, the arrangements of the songs from 7 didn't strike the same emotional chord in me as the original or the interpretations of the songs on While One Is Less Than Two, and the more dance-leaning songs that were reworked for Where's the Drop, such as Monophobia, FN Pig, and Strobe, I felt like I really would have just rather listened to the originals. So here we are in 2019 with a 4th iteration of the songs from 7 in the form of Here's the Drop, a remix album for Where's the Drop. Needless to say, I did not expect this remix album to happen, and I even more so did not expect to enjoy it, not only because I didn't care all that much for the subject being remixed, but because I don't really tend to care for remix albums that much. Talked about this a little bit in my review of the reworks with the wonky angle, but I feel like remix albums, it's just like a bunch of different artists that get commissioned to do remixes of specific songs, and of course they try to make the coolest thing they possibly can, flipping the original and showing off their original style. Similarly to the reworks, I thought deadmau5's last remix album, 5 Years of Mouse, was pretty messy, featuring old and new takes on what were Zimmerman's greatest hits at the time. It really had no structure or cohesiveness or anything like that. I mean, I've got the CD, but admittedly I don't really listen to it all that much. Of course, I didn't really expect Here's the Drop to end up any differently, even though maybe I should have, considering the original album's orchestral nature. Expected to like maybe 2 or 3 of the remixes on this package. I was especially looking forward to hearing No Mana's take on NVIDIA and PEEKABOO's remix of Strobe. However, what I did not expect for this remix album to do was to just about blow my socks off. But not because of the reasons that I typically enjoy remixes. Let's take Feed Me's remix of Strobe, for example. One of my all-time favorites. It's remixing a fantastic song and capturing the emotion of the original while also blending Feed Me's signature electro style into it, and in a pretty unique way. On the contrary, I don't think Here's the Drop encaptures quite that, but instead it's more of a complete reimagination of the original Where's the Drop album, where I could really care less who's doing the remixes. It's really a far cry from the type of remix album that I just come out of feeling like it wasn't really an experience. Instead, at least to me, Here's the Drop is more of an immersive, cohesive album experience, a complete dance music reimagination of the Where's the Drop album that sees house, techno, and electro meeting head-to-head with orchestral music, and also serving as a pretty nice tribute to the music of deadmau5. Now, do I think this album holds a candle to 7 or While One is Less Than 2? No, not really. But as far as remix albums go, I mean, I never really see remix albums where it seems like all of the artists involved are kind of working together toward a common goal. At least that's how this project came across to me. Obviously, there's a lot to dig into here. This album's over an hour and a half long, and it's significantly longer than the original Where's the Drop. I'm not going to try to talk about everything, more just explain why this album feels special to me. As I said before, Here's the Drop is less of a remix album to me and more just a straight album experience, where I less come out of it trying to recall who had the best take on their respective original song, and more just coming out of it thinking about the experience as a whole. Really, the best remixes for me on this album aren't the ones that were the craziest or most unique, most experimental, but rather the ones that most heavily contributed to the vibe and the aesthetic of the entire project. I would say that mau5trap did a good job of having Morgan Page and PEEKABOO kind of bookend this project with their respective remixes, because they're really the two most different on this project. Had Morgan Page's 2011 or 2012 electro house styled remix of Imaginary Friends ended up anywhere but the beginning, or PEEKABOO's melodic future bass infused dubstep take on Strobe ended up anywhere but the end, those two would have really taken me out of the experience, which folks like Pig and Dan, No Mana, Spencer Brown, and Matt Lang kind of work collectively to create in the center chunk of this album. A good chunk of this middle section really sees the remixers kind of crafting these minimal techno and progressive influenced songs that use the orchestral elements and the original deadmau5 melodies kind of sparingly, only in order to create an atmosphere that'll eventually be flipped into, a more dance-oriented beat. The production across this center section is so good and so consistent that if I had never heard deadmau5 before and you just tossed this album into my lap, I probably would have listened to it and just assumed it was all the same artist doing these takes. Most of the remixes are designed pretty similarly and use pretty much the same amounts of the orchestral bits, maybe with the exception of the remixes from Galia or Galia, not sure how that's pronounced, and Sian or Sian. I'm not entirely sure how that's supposed to be pronounced either. I've seen quite a few complaints about the latter, people just saying it sounds too much like an original song, doesn't really sound like a remix of Monophobia that much, and it doesn't really use all that much of the orchestral elements, and I mean, I agree with that to an extent, but also in this album's context, I don't really mind the original song's elements being used so sparingly. In fact, I almost prefer it that way. Plus, it's got got this great like dark techno sound that I feel like really contributes to the overall aesthetic that the album has. It bugs me a little bit more on the Gallia remix, which is probably my least favorite tune of the bunch. Kind of feels like I'm just listening to an upbeat dance track from the 90s, which aesthetically I feel like doesn't really serve the album. And on top of that, it's a remix of such like a dark song from the original 7 project that it just really doesn't make all that much sense. Some other takes that I found to be particularly interesting, Gregory Reveret's remix of Coelacanth, which kind of lures you in with those orchestral elements, but then just hits you with this powerful garage beat. Spencer Brown's remix is a frickin' journey. It's over 9.5 minutes long, just with all these different switch-ups and change-ups, seamlessly weaving in the original FN Pig while also bringing a lot of new ideas to the table that fit really well in the context of this album, as well as using the orchestral elements subtly but powerfully. Mr. Bill's take on the song that I've never been able to pronounce is also pretty exceptional. Kind of wacky and IDM influenced, as I've come to expect Mr. Bill's stuff to be, but working really well with the kind of aesthetic that the rest of the album builds. It's epic, it's powerful. PEEKABOO's remix of Strobe I think even deserves another shout out, just because it's so different than what I expected, especially after hearing songs like Colossal, the collaboration with Dirt Monkey. I was really curious to see how this remix was going to turn out, and it completely like flipped the song on its head in a way that I did not expect. Very melodic and emotional, just a feel-good closer for the album, and I like how it keeps that last like orchestral bit of Strobe in there at the end, so you can kind of ponder on the entire experience of this project. Like I said, there's a lot more I can dig into with this album, but I just don't think it makes all that much sense to try to describe every single detail. The fact of the matter is, I just find this to be a very smooth, cohesive, enjoyable remix album. I don't really find those all that often. The fact that this project is able to hold my attention for more than an hour and a half speaks volumes, given I don't think it's perfect or anything like that, but it's pretty much as close as a remix album is going to get, especially when there are just so many different artists involved in this project. It's really amazing to me that they managed to work together to create this singular experience and vibe. I would for sure suggest giving it a spin. For Here's the Drop, I am feeling a decent 7.5 out of 10. As always, if you haven't listened to this album yet and you'd like to, I have the Spotify link down in the description below, and if you have listened to it, make sure to let me know what you think about it down in the comment section. A quick shout out to my sponsor Audionamics. If you're an artist and you're not fortunate enough to be able to get stems from other artists for songs that you like the remixers on this album, definitely consider checking out X-Track Stems by Audionamics. It's a tool that I use a lot, and I think a lot of you will enjoy as well. It does a really good job of being able to take a raw song file and be able to split it into drums, instruments, and vocals. If you want to look into X-Track Stems or any of the other fine software that Audionamics makes, make sure to check the sponsor link down in the description. If you guys like any of their products and end up purchasing something, I'll get a nice 10% kickback on it. So yeah, you should totally do that. If you're new to the channel and want to see more content like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you enjoyed this review, leave me a like. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.